Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. Today's topic, I am going to talk to you about the dark night of the soul. Most of us have had a time in our life when we've experienced utter despair or a sense of detachment from this life. And we may even have questioned whether or not we wanted to even remain in this world. For some of this coincided with our Saturn return. And you might well ask, what is a Saturn return? And that is an astrological transit that occurs when the planet Saturn reaches the same place in the sky that it occupied when you were born. While the planet might not come exactly to the spot until you're 29 or 30 years old, the influence of the Saturn return is considered to start in the person's late 20s, notably the age of 27. And psychologically, the first Saturn return is seen as the time of reaching full adulthood and being faced, perhaps for the first time, with adult challenges and responsibilities. I know for many of you, you've taken responsibility from very young, worked earlier in your lives, but often there are other responsibilities that happen around that age of 27. In Western astrology, according to Wikipedia, the phenomenon is described by Western astrologers as influencing a person's life development at roughly 29.5-year intervals. Though the planetary influence might be felt for a few years before the exact conjunction, and variable orbits of the planets can also make the time period a little longer or shorter. These intervals, or aka returns, coincide with the approximate time that it takes the planet Saturn to make one orbit around the Sun, roughly 29.5 years. Western astrologers believe that as Saturn returns, to the degree that in its orbit occupied your chart at the time of your birth, a person crosses over a major threshold and enters the next stage of life. With the first Saturn return, a person leaves youth behind and enters adulthood. With the second return comes maturity. And with the third, it's usually the final return. A person enters wise old age. These periods are estimated to occur roughly at the ages of 27 to 31, 56 to 60, and 84 to 90. And for some people, a fourth return occurs for very few people, and those are those that live to see the age of 114 to 118. Now, in Hindu astrology, Jyotish, South Asian astrology, views Saturn's transits around the 12 houses of the zodiac as very important during these moments because it affects each of those areas of our life. The houses in the chart represent different areas or aspects of our life, how we relate to our self, inner and outer world, and they affect those aspects as it passes through the house. They have that a 7.5-year period in which Saturn transits the houses before and after, as well as in the houses where the native moon lies. Now, these 7.5 years can often be very difficult. People frequently go through hardship and obstacles during these periods. There's kind of a little bonus for people that have a Capricorn, Aquarius, or Libra moon, because they might actually see some great progress during those times of stress, since Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius and is exalted in Libra. In addition, Saturn's transit through the 4th and 8th houses of everyone's charts are considered important. And for those of you that thought that sounded like I was speaking a foreign language, I apologize, but it's very precise. I'm going to read a little bit more to you about Saturn return from the site astrology.about.com. This one is the advanced astrology that talks about Saturn return. The Saturn return is a wake-up call, And this is why so many people fear it, because of its sobering realities. If you spent your 20s in a fog, kind of coasting on youthful charm, it becomes obvious that your foundation is too flimsy for the long haul. When you're young, it seems like there's infinite time to decide what you want to be when you grow up. And according to them, they're saying Father Time swoops down as you're nearly 30 to say, you're all grown up now. Pick a path. It's time to get real. Sometimes we make life choices because we really know who we are. At Saturn Return, before we really know who we are. And that's what this topic today is about the dark night of the soul. At Saturn Return, some of these choices are revealed to be out of sync with our true destiny. So it's a big deal because there are a lot of marriages and careers that come up for review. According to the U.S. Census, there's a peak of divorce around the age 30 when promises that were made in youth don't seem to match any longer the core of the person as they go toward that turning point. On the other hand, Saturn might bring a fated relationship that leads to a serious commitment with long-term potential, so it's really a time of change. The Saturn return brings with it the pressure of time, and often the first awareness of your own mortality. You might take stock of what it would take to achieve those big dreams, and often a sense of dread at ever getting there. But happily, it's a time when things like discipline, focus, and clear sight come in and give you kind of a pragmatic hope. You'll figure out what's still possible and make the changes to get on track. They continue to say it's a crossroads period where life-altering decisions are made. The Saturn return often creates a crisis that puts you face to face with your fears. And many of these have deep roots in your psyche, but they're also about living up to societal expectations. Saturn causes a mini earthquake to the foundations, and it's enabling you to shake off what's not really you. Saturn is called the teacher, too. Its other alias is Lord of Karma, and here's the test of whether you can become your own authority. Can you discover an unshakable core within yourself that will be the basis for a lifetime of growth? There's a link between the influence of Saturn and depression. Saturn has been known as the great malefic, which means causing or capable of causing harm or destruction, especially by supernatural means. In astrology, it relates to the planets Saturn and Mars. They're traditionally considered to have an unfavorable influence. Anyway, Saturn, the great malefic, whose transits are often met with dread, is simply the instigator of change, all meant to lead you toward healing and a real foundation of self. If you're in your Saturn return and finding it hard to cope, let go of what's not working. When you're holding on to things that Saturn's trying to break up, that's when the suffering is compounded. If you don't know your Saturn sign, you can look up your birth chart. I know there's a great site called astro.com, astro.com. It is really fabulous. It has all kinds of charts that you can create. They have interactive charts where you can hover your mouse over the segment of the chart and it'll explain what it is. You can print out the meanings of stuff. You can be your own astrologer there if you wanted to, although professional astrologers have an even higher perspective on things because of their expertise. Astrologers do often say that it's important to do your Saturn, and that means that you need to learn what it is that Saturn challenges you with. You can read about that when you look up your Saturn sign, how it affects you and your other planets. And it's good to seek out other interpretations and spend some time figuring out what the taskmaster or teacher or great malefic is trying to expect from you. You can read up on Saturn in each of the 4 elements too, the qualities and the houses, how it affects all of those, and of course your sun sign or zodiac sign. So the lowdown is Saturn as the Lord of Karma brings you what you have earned through your disciplined pursuit of goals and experience. You'll find out during Saturn return that what you've manifested up to that point, how well you've used your talents, It's kind of like a mid-semester exam. In myth or belief, Saturn is also the god of the harvest. So it's harvest time during your Saturn return. If you haven't sown anything, there's very little that you're going to reap, and you'll realize that it's time to get busy. Saturn often brings a death to the old ways of doing things, but later on you're likely to say, good riddance. The death phase is never easy, but keep in mind that rebirth will come. Saturn's realm is responsibility, and it's going to show you how to grow through relationships, raising children, pursuing a challenging career, finding discipline for your art, etc. It's not designed to humiliate you, but to inspire you to stand on solid ground. Saturn is like the wise elder who sees right through your excuses and empty boasts. So try to make friends with Saturn through personal discipline and finding a step-by-step path to your goals. It's very simple, but not always easy task of making your dream a reality by doing it on a daily basis. Sometimes it's the little habits that lead to our greater success. The Saturn return reminds you of what's truly important and makes sure that you're on the path to claim your highest potential. And that's the dark night of the soul from an astrological perspective. You know, for many of us, our dark night of the soul can occur in tandem with a traumatic incident in our lives, a shift in our being that is so profound that we might not even feel that we are even the same person after it's passed through. I was talking this week with a friend of mine, and he was talking about this dark night of his soul. It was funny as I prepared for the program to have somebody mention that they were talking about their dark night of the soul. So we sat down and talked about it. And for him, he had been working a high security, highly responsible position. And he said it's just like something just left him, like there was just this shift that occurred inside of him. And he just walked off the job, and he ended up doing a job that was for him fairly menial and wandering around. He lived in Hawaii, and so he was able to literally live off the land. And this lasted for several months. It was quite an extended period of time. And during that time, it's almost like he was trying to learn again how to view what had happened to him, how to interact again with people, because it was becoming difficult for him to make that connection within himself and outside of himself. When I first heard the term dark night of the soul, I sort of thought I had an instinctive understanding of it, sort of like you might have. I related it to the times in my life that I didn't have any hope. The challenges that were surrounding me felt totally insurmountable. Times that weighed on my soul like a dark night that would never end. Of course, there's that expression that it's darkest before the dawn, but when your life is under extreme duress, it's difficult to remember that dawn does follow the darkness of the night, and that spring follows winter, and that good things do follow those that are unspeakably bad. That phrase, the dark night of the soul, caught my attention, and I found out that there had been a book that was written by a Christian mystic that was entitled that. And he also wrote a poem entitled the same thing, The Dark Night of the Soul. And his name was Juan de la Cruz. That would translate into English Saint John of the Cross. He was a mystic, a Spanish Christian mystic. I'll warn you ahead of time before I start reading this that it's written in very dramatic language. So kind of switch your brain a sec to Old English and the floral language of poets for a minute. He was considered by E. Allison Piers, who translated and edited his poem, to be the most sublime of all the Spanish mystics. And the poem talks about escaping despair by finding comfort in connection to the love of the divine. St. John of the Cross, or San Juan de la Cruz, was contemplating the period in Jesus's life when he was alone and facing his soon-to-be crucifixion. Here it is. On a dark night, kindled in love with yearnings, oh happy chance, I went forth without being observed, my house being now at rest. In darkness and secure, by the secret ladder disguised, O happy chance, in darkness and in concealment, my house now being at rest. In the happy night, in secret, when none saw me, nor I beheld aught, without light or guide, save that which burned in my heart. This light guided me more surely than the light of noonday to the place where he, well I knew who, was awaiting me, a place where none appeared. O night that guided me, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that joined beloved with lover, lover transformed in the beloved, upon my flowery breast, kept holy for himself alone, there he stayed sleeping, and I caressed him, and the fanning of the cedars made a breeze. The breeze blew from the turret as I parted his locks. With his gentle hand he wounded my neck. I think they mean wound around my neck, and caused all my senses to be suspended. I remained lost in oblivion. My face I reclined on the beloved. All ceased, and I abandoned myself, leaving my cares forgotten among the lilies. I think that's a very beautiful parallel story, sort of a parable or a mystical interpretation of how when we go into our dark night of the soul, that darkness brings a connection to truth and to things beyond. There's another book also entitled The Dark Night of the Soul, and this one was written by Manly P. Hall, and he's a spiritualist author and medium. He writes a metaphysical interpretation of Juan de la Cruz's writings. The reason that I'm talking about these periods of oblivion and hardship are because it's really important, very important for good mediumship and psychic interpretation of messages that we receive, to have clarity, to release our ego, and to let go of our intellect, to be able to see the dark and light that is within ourselves and others, to be aware that light always conquers dark, and that we are more than our physical being. Although Juan de la Cruz, St. John of the Cross, wrote an entire book on the topic, its message was of personal inspiration, and it demonstrated that man's search for reality is unilateral. It's common to all of us, regardless of age, regardless of race or generation. And it assumes that man, and I use that term broadly because it's an older text and it just genderizes that experience. Of course, it means women and men. It assumes that man has three natures or parts, of which the highest and first is essentially spiritual. The second part is psychic, or belonging to the sphere of the soul. And the third is the material body or corporal body, related to the realms of the body. So we've got our spiritual connection, we have our soul that sort of bridges the gaps between the two, and then we have our physical body. And there's a premise that because we're human and that we have all three of these aspects, that we are subject to confusion on two levels. The first level of confusion is that of the body, because the pressure of other people, opinions of others, creates an identity crisis as we live and grow. All of us are formed by the families that we grow up, the ideologies that we're exposed to, and the opinions we're exposed to. And they may not resonate entirely with us, but they form our outer world. And we use the perception of others for orientation. Those views of ourselves are taken through the eyes of others, and it doesn't always match up. It doesn't match who we feel that we are on the inside, and this causes the first confusion. The second confusion happens within us, Because although we operate in a world of opinions, we have our own opinions about ourselves, and they're not always positive. So within us, there's a certain confusion about who we are at a very deep level. Juan de la Cruz points out that there is confusion because the outer world and its opinions of us exist, but also because of the immaturity in our mind and our life. He thinks of the soul as being darkened and existing in a condition of opinion and senses, and that part of us is moved by thought and emotion, and therefore we don't have very much stability at the core of our lives. If you take emotion and thought and you mix it in with opinions of other people and senses and our own opinions, it creates kind of a war between the opinions of and advice of others and the ones that we've even formed about ourselves, our instincts and self-perception. And isn't that a struggle that we can all relate to? Because we do have strong feelings and strong opinions and are subject to the strong feelings and strong opinions of other people. So the premise is that in order to ascend or to resolve the conflict between the body and the outer world and the soul and the inner world, the soul has to learn to leave the body. I think of that as the left and the right brain, that our body, brain, and our mind, soul, our brain being the physical organ that processes information and regulates our physical body, and the mind, which is our perception and connected to our soul and to our higher spirit. This is accomplished, this balance that when we learn to leave our body in this life without passing over to the other side, that this is accomplished through the outward pressures and inward pressures that creates a crisis within each of us and forces us to either give up or move forward. And that's our dark night of the soul. It's that battle of finding balance between our inner and outer worlds. And in order to overcome it, we have to separate ourselves from both the crisis that occurs because of our interface with the outside world, the outer world, and our crisis that occurs within us. We come to a place of quietude where we can discover our life purpose and feel peace, leaving behind the chaos in favor of flow and order, and finding that order in our lives. We balance ourselves, and then we come to that point of stillness where we just know. Often when I'm teaching people or helping train people in connecting with their gifts and utilizing them more deeply, we travel in a meditation to a point where time stops, where there's a very deep stillness for people. That discipline of the soul, we mentioned the discipline of Saturn Return earlier. That discipline of the soul is the process of soul growth, and it feeds on an acceptance of reality of the circumstances around us. That thing from AA, accept the things you cannot change. And there are things that we can't change. There are powers that are far beyond our ability to control them. Learning that we may not like them, we may not agree with them, we might not appreciate that it's painful or awful to deal with certain circumstances that exist, but accepting that we cannot change the actions, thoughts, or will of other people, and then coming into that state of letting go of our fear and our need to please other people. So the soul becomes disciplined by becoming, in essence, a servant to our higher will. And when the soul becomes in service to reality by agreeing that there are things beyond our control, but of course there are things we can choose to or allow, that's where our reality becomes enlightened. That's the mystery of the great alchemistical transmutation, the attainment of true stability in the psychic life, and that's to recognize that suffering it's just part of life. and that our sense of discomfort within ourselves is not merely a matter of the imposition of other people on our lives, but also a state within ourself where we're miserable because we insist on believing that we're correct in our attitudes, and yet our attitudes are not bringing us any comfort or happiness. If you tuned in late, I'd like to say that you can find past episodes of this show on YouTube, and I have them listed on my website. If you do go to YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. It'll let you know as soon as I post a new episode. And if you'd like to see them kind of organized and not just scroll through the channel seeing what you can find, you can go to my website at mediumtracylockwood.com, and on the radio show /YouTube page, you'll see them organized. I might point out that the things that are listed over to the left side are kind of hardcore mediumship development, and then there's some interesting guests and topic on the right, and some things in the middle that are just interesting. I want to also take a minute and thank my editor. She edits the voice track and also any photographs that are used in the YouTube presentation. She is our editor, so just a shout out to Darlene Spies and a kudo for her excellent work. We're back to our topic, and we were talking about the dark night of the soul, and we were talking about sort of that process of soul discipline. That's kind of a weird concept for most of us to think about disciplining our soul. But if you think of the soul as our mind, then maybe it makes a little bit more difference. We're all transmuting, we're all manifesting, we're all creating in this life. And remembering that balance between what it is that we can't control and letting go of those concepts that stand in our way and the people that are no longer beneficial for us. You know, in the Saturn Return discussion, relationships, they're with us for a time sometimes, and sometimes it's time to let those things go, or to introduce new people and bring new people into your life, attract new people into your life. But those changes are very important. Our soul's progress then isn't just a matter of being uncomfortable with ourselves or others imposing their thing, but it's that balance. And we were talking about how our belief system can make us miserable. Abraham Hicks, through Esther, the medium, talks about, is it important to be right or is it important to feel good? And sometimes walking away from an argument or letting down the banner of, I need to do it just on principle because it's right, but it creates so much stress for you. Sometimes it's just the better part of valor to walk away. We're all connected. Life never ends. So even if you release a relationship, that person that has served a particular role in your life, you will see them again, and perhaps in a different way. There are people that play the bad guy in our life, and there are people that play the hero in our lives. And all of them, when they come off stage and we're backstage again, back home on the other side of the invisible barrier, we meet and thank each other for playing the particular roles that we did. In some cases, not always. But it is important, the roles that we play in each other's lives. I just love that quote from Dolly Parton's song, sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. So our soul's progress is not merely the exchange of concepts, and it's not a matter of trial and error, because if we try and repeat the same effort, we're going to get the same results. So if we lose face for the merit of trying, then it's only by changing our perspective that we find that core of truth within ourselves and we're able to build and begin again. So the beginning is actually to become open, to relax our own egoism, and to become capable of taking a receptive attitude, so that instead of continually defending our position, we come quietly to a point of examining the essential integrity of our position and discover, first of all, whether or not we can defend what we believe. And then as we relax and permit all things that are pressuring us to fade away, and come face to face with the fact of actions that we're taking that might be blocking us or inhibiting our progress, that's when we can begin to perceive all that we have and are in terms of being objective. That results from a certain concept or idea. And again, if we let it go, we realize maybe we're wrong, or maybe that thought process doesn't serve us anymore. Or maybe it's right, but this rightness or wrongness cannot really be immediately discerned until you step back and take a look at it. All of us make mistakes. All of us put too much energy into certain relationships. All of us have fallen for lies of other people or trickery. All of us have suffered something physically, whether it's abuse or whether it's a disability or whether it's an economic hardship. We've all suffered some things. We all do some things well, and we all do some things not so well. But if we integrate into the patterns of our lives, both the light and the dark that is within ourselves, and acknowledge the light and dark that are in those that are around us, and not stay in denial, not repress what we feel or think, not live for the ways that things could have been or should have been or would have been, but looking at it with that quiet balance, that's when we can start to integrate truth and can attain a state of what Manly P. Hall calls quietism. He continues to say that the individual, in order to attain a state of true internal enlightenment, must first recover from confusion, that confusion that occurs in our outer world and our inner world that we were talking about in the last half of the show. When we're able to reach a detached observation of the situations in our life and maintain a neutral perspective and let go of our ego, let go of our intellect. And when I say letting go of our intellect, I don't mean that you're instantly just going to be stupid. I'm talking about letting go of preconceived ideas, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And when we let go of our ego and intellect and we just observe and listen to the truth that emerges, then we will have found peace. For me, my dark night of the soul occurred as the consequence of a 10-year custody dispute. Parts of it were more intense than others, and it was very interesting to me the first time an astrologer brought my Saturn return to my awareness, because it absolutely overlaid and shadowed a portion of my life. I'm one of the lucky ones that has a Libra moon, one of the 3 moons that are of benefit during that time. I feel that it really benefited me in my personal evolvement and my understanding, but it was a disastrous time emotionally for me. And the pain that my children were experiencing, it was really unbearable for me to withstand. It just was unspeakably bad. At its peak, I had a dream, and the dream was that I was in a mental hospital. I woke up, and one of the people that had helped with trying to advocate for the children's rights in the situation was in my dream. And I woke up in a wheelchair in this mental hospital in my dream. I kind of came out of a fog, and I looked at him and I said, "How long was I out?" Meaning, how long was I detached from reality and had lost my mind? And he said, 3 days. And he very gently and very quietly took my wheelchair and pushed me down the hallway into a room for me to rest. And I woke up and I thought, there is no way in hell that I'm going to allow this situation to break me. I refuse to go there in reality. And it helped me pull together a strength to continue. Where that strength came from, I really don't know, because the level of despair that I was experiencing at that time was so overwhelming, and my resources emotionally, financially, physically were so depleted. My emotional state was so profoundly affected that it really was nearly miraculous that I could find strength from anywhere at all. But yet I did. I think we've all seen that post on Facebook that goes something like, "You'll survive today because your record for surviving the worst days of your life is 100%." And I'm not sure if that's how it exactly goes, but it works for me. And we have survived and we have overcome. And we are able to pull ourselves forward with strength that comes from invisible places. That conflict that we have, that challenge that we have, it's the human condition. And we're so much more than just physical bodies. The words, "this too shall pass," or "it came to pass," speak about the impermanence of everything within an eternal context. And it's funny, isn't it, to think that everything passes by and yet everything is connected. So I'm going to leave you with hope and my blessing and my encouragement that you're not alone. You're not alone in your experience of the dark night of your soul, because it's part of the larger context of understanding ourselves and our place in the universe, of gaining that higher perspective, that view of things, that detached observation and that inner calm. And you're not alone because you have guides and angels around you helping you take steps forward, even when you don't imagine or feel that they're there. They will never desert you. They will never leave you. And they will always be loving and kind. So in the times that you think that you cannot take that next step, you're not alone. And you're not alone because there are people that will come into your life to help you if you will allow that assistance. I know some of you may feel like, no, nobody cares, I'm all alone. But if you will open yourself to the possibility that help could come to you and not look for that help from the outside, because we often externalize the solutions of our life. We often think, well, if somebody did this, or if this person came, it would be okay. Or if I hadn't lost so-and-so, then they would be here to advise me. We think, well, if they would just leave first, or if they would just die, we have all these thoughts about solutions coming from the outside, but they don't always come from the outside. That solution, according to the writings about the dark night of the soul, they come from a balance of letting go of those expectations of others and of ourselves and coming to that place of quietude and finding that strength. Sometimes it is the path of least resistance that's our way through. Sometimes we could do better by walking away from the relationship that causes us pain than trying to change it or make it be different or wishing it was different, staying in it when it's just not going to work, or to let go of the argument and the need to be right, to create our own doorway that will lead us away from the circumstances into a life of greater peace and happiness. As I was preparing for today's show, I ran across a beautiful blessing that I wanted to share with you. It's a Buddhist blessing, and it's become one of my favorites. I heard about it when one of my dear friend's sons passed, and he had recorded it as a video, not knowing but perhaps sensing that he was about to exit the world and wanting to make a statement, wanting to make an impact, wanting to leave something behind that would make a difference. So here it is. May all beings in all worlds, whether high or low, visible or invisible, simple or complex, all beings, without exception, may each and every one of them find lasting peace. May none have enmity nor hatred toward one another. May none feel suffering. And may the causes of suffering be eliminated from their lives. May they instead have happiness and the causes of happiness. And may all beings be free from the painful cycles of birth and death. With this prayer, may the merit of what I say and its activities be worked towards the benefit of all that live, and that all that live will live or have lived shall benefit as well. And I just think that that's beautiful. So I want to say, stand strong, my friends. I give you my love. May you find that place of quietude and inner guidance and balance to survive all the storms of your life. I say namaste. Namaste is I honor the good in you, the God in you, the divine in you, and I honor that place in me. And when you are in that place of quietude, and I am in that place of quietude, we are one. I also chose something that a client of mine brought to my office. You may have seen it again on Facebook. It's called Cleansing Prayer, and I think You Are Luminous puts it out. I thought it fit in pretty well with what we're doing today. I am now choosing to cleanse myself and release any and all thought forms, beings, situations, and energies that are no longer of service to my highest and greatest good across all planes of my existence, across all universes and across all lifetimes. I ask that all energies that are less than love be transmuted for the highest good of all, and so it is. So I wish that you will find peace in your life. I wish that you will find that place of quiet where you can develop your gift and be true to what it is that you see, hear, feel, and know. And that you find that place of happiness. And happiness isn't because of outer things. Happiness is just because we find a state of acceptance of outer things we cannot change and comes to an awareness of who we are as souls. And it's found in that quiet place. So in developing your gifts, I highly recommend that you take time, preferably daily if you're able, but at least a few times a week, to do an extended quiet time, a little time out for yourself. I love to do that to a couple of CDs. They're not mine, but I think they're fantastic. One of them is called The Ultimate Om, and it's available, I'm sure. Just Google it, The Ultimate Om, you'll find it. And the other one is called Sacred Drums, and I think it's called A Shamanic Journey or For Your Shamanic Journey, but Sacred Drums. And the first is about just the sound, that vibration of the universe. And you don't have to sit in some kind of yoga position. You can lie down on your side or kick back in your recliner or sit on the couch or lie down on the couch. You can make yourself completely comfortable when you give yourself your quiet time. That second CD, the Sacred Drums, is a shamanic rhythm, which is that dun 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 dun, that repetitive sound. And scientifically, they've shown that that will switch your brain the fastest to that theta wave or that state between sleep and wake where we receive the best information and are able to center ourselves and find that place of quietude, that place of timelessness. Find yourself some stillness in your life. There are so many things that take our attention, our jobs, the relationships that we have around us. And we also have the distractions that we insert in our life and don't even realize, the radio in the car or the TV when we get home. There's some things that don't enhance our quality of life. Some things are better to just let go. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. If you're interested in a private reading or private tutoring, I do offer one-on-one tutoring sessions by Skype. I have clients actually all over the world now, Korea and Canada and India and England and around Chile and around and about. So a shout out to all you people all around the world. I'd love to work with you if you want to enhance your gifts or work on your gifts. And I don't have a curriculum for that. I work one-on-one with you. So wherever you are, we take it forward from there. And I intuitively tailor that process to you personally. So check that out on my website. at mediumtracylockwood.com. And I love friends. I'd love for you to try to friend me on Facebook at facebook.com at Psychic Medium Tracey Lockwood. If you want to text me and set up a session, you can. My number is 540-998-9789. I'm going to leave you with my best love and concern and compassion for your life. And we'll see you next week for a view of life from a medium's perspective. And just remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing. See you next week.